Hi guys, so this is my basic framing demo, and today I'm going to show you all the different tools and pieces of equipment and hardware that I use in order to construct a frame from start to finish after ordering, some molding or sometimes ordering a frame that's pre-assembled online. When I order molding, I use the Novex 180 angle cutting saw, and it's just attached to the table with some screws, a big wooden plank. I'm showing you here how to sort of suspend the saw in case you're moving things around underneath. And there's a little lock there that you can unlatch in order to let the saw down. You also push the little red button down there to move the saw to 45 degrees or to any sort of angle that you need in order to cut a nice angle for your molding so that the frame will fit together. I buy all sorts of different types of molding. This is gold foil molding. It's a little harder to use, and it tends to chip a little bit, but the end product, the end result is beautiful. Here are the little stoppers that I have on the back here. What you're going to want to do is push down and pull up on that little elbow, and then you put your molding to the back and you turn the little elbow, and then you pull up on the little red lever in the back, and it holds it like a suction cup so that while you're sawing it doesn't move around. I also hold it with my hand, but really far away, so that of course I don't cut my fingers off. But you're going to get something like this when you make your cut. And what you don't want to do, here are the do's and don'ts of molding cutting. You don't want to cut this part like I did here, which is my very, very first molding cut when I started framing that I kept in order to show the do's and don'ts of framing. You want that gold part, which is called the rabbet, as you can see, which fits over the piece of artwork. You want that to be the shortest distance when you cut. And you want the back of the frame to be the longest distance. This is because the rabbet, or the little part I showed you earlier, is the part of the molding that goes on the inside. So this is a clamping miter box with saw. If you don't have a saw table, or if you're saving up for one or something like that, it took me a while to get my own. I was using this for a long time. And it's basically the same thing. It's just a hand saw. You can get the same angles, but you have to make sure it's secure on a table. You might have to screw it down to a big piece of wood or wooden table or workbench or crafting table, something like that. And what you want to do is you want to make sure before you start sawing that you use this little peg to sort of hold in the piece of molding and secure it so that you can put your saw down and cut the piece and it's not moving around or wobbling as you're cutting, which makes for a really bad cut and then ultimately a bad frame job and poor craftsmanship. So this is a lot easier to get, a lot more affordable from the store. Now I'm test fitting with a corner vise, and I have a smaller clamp to the side there. But before I glue these, I want to make sure that they're sanded. You can see a little bit of frayed edge there. So what I would do is I would sand that off before gluing it and clamping it. This is the hardest step, by the way. And then I would put some little holes to sort of perforate the part where the molding joins together so that the glue has somewhere to go and so that the glue doesn't sort of seep out the edges. This is a Vise corner clamp, and it can also be drilled into the table, but it's heavy enough that I don't need to sort of drill into the table. You want to make sure your molding is flush when you sort of just test the fit there and how it fits together with the other piece of molding. And when you do glue your pieces together, you want to use some wood glue. That's the first step. This is really the hardest part of, framing in general, in my opinion, because you want everything to be flush. You don't want the frames to be warped. And if you don't have a vise clamp, you can always buy a little corner clamp from a hardware store, which is what this is. I have several of these, so I can clamp almost the whole frame at once. This is a Dewalt brand corner clamp, and it's very easy to use. You just do pretty much the same thing with this. You fit it in, like we did with the vise, and just add some wood glue there. Now this is the third variety of clamp. It's called the Rockler clamp kit, and it's almost like a band clamp, but you have these little red removable parts that you can see on the screen there that enable you to sort of get snug up to the frame and hold the frame in place while it's gluing. The great thing about this is it holds the entire frame together while it's gluing. I'm just showing you here how the top edges fit in. Now normally you'll do this with a frame that has nothing inside it, just the frame, no glass, no foam board or anything. Now we're moving on to joining. Glue is not enough to hold your molding together. So what you need is, and you'll see a lot of these staples in the back of frames that you buy from the store, something called a pro joiner. Now this is a glued frame, and I'm showing you here that all the edges are flush. Glue's not enough, so we use this. And what this does, the Logan Pro Joiner, is it punches a little V-shaped staple into the back of the frame so that it really, really tightly holds the frame together and bears the weight of your work. Otherwise, your piece will sag, or the edges will fall apart. The glue's not going to do it. The glue just holds it and then dries so that you're sort of prepared for this step. So now what I do with this piece of hardware is I lift up the bottom and I slide out the little staple holder. Here's one of the staples. It's really tiny, it's a little hard to see, but it's a little V-shaped staple. And what I do is I put it in this little device here that slides underneath, and I make sure that the sharp edge is facing up, because that's where the frame is going to come down, and that's where the staple is going to connect and go into the frame. So I follow the guidelines, and I put the little staple in there with the sharp side up. And you can also put 2 staples in there so that when you press down, 2 staples go in, and you can save time by doing that. It's a little more efficient, but it doesn't always work with really, really tough, dense wood. So now what I'm going to do is slide the frame in there, and I'm going to make sure it fits up against the back, but I'm also pushing down until I connect or touch the little staple that's sticking up. And then I stop there. Then I find the little screw on the side there that tightens up the bottom plate, and I lift my frame off, and now you see that the bottom plate is in place and ready to be pressed with the frame flush against the back. And now this little lever here just pushes a little part that has some teeth, and it holds the frame to the back of the Pro Joiner so that the frame doesn't wobble around and move while you're pressing the lever down and stapling it. So now I'll take hold of the lever and I'll press it down slowly to make sure it connects, and then I'll push down once really hard and really quickly so that the staple goes in. Now you can see the staple there. It's just that V-shaped staple. And now with the glue and the staple, it'll hold that frame. For thicker frames, you'll need a couple more staples. One is not enough, but one's enough for this one. Sometimes, this happened a lot the first time I did it, this staple won't go in all the way. And that's what I'm showing you there. So what you want to do is just take a hammer and make sure there's some cloth on the table between, the table and your frame, and just hammer it back in, and it'll go in, and you can move on. So another good reason to own this little Vise clamp, this Vise corner clamp, is hammering a nail diagonally through the side. This is the other way to do it. If you don't have a pro joiner, you can use a clamp to just hammer a nail in diagonally through both of the pieces of molding, after it's glued, of course. So once that nail goes in, you can just touch up the little hole that it made on the side with a little wood glue and some sawdust. And then this frame's black, so you pick up some black and just paint over it, and it'll never be noticed. So this is a piece of glass. This is a UV museum quality piece of glass that I have cut for me. You can cut the glass yourself. You don't have to get that UV museum quality glass. I get it because there's less glare. And you can cut your own glass. You can order acrylic or plexiglass online when you buy frames. You can order from Toyo online little glass cutters. It's very easy to cut glass if you have a nice sharp glass cutter. But what I do is down in Middletown, in my town, there's a establishment called Middletown Plate Glass, and I just go there and they cut it for me in person. It takes about a couple minutes, and sometimes they give me these free gloves, which is nice. But you can buy these are white cotton gloves, and you put one of these on each hand before you handle the glass and before you finish your frame, so that you don't get oil from your hands or water or dirt on the glass, because it easily stains, and you don't want to wash UV glass with Windex or spray anything on it, or scuff it up too much. This is one of the frames that I'm using in this demo, just to show you how to staple dual driver staplers in the back. So if you don't want to go through the process of using all that hardware to assemble your piece with molding and almost do it from scratch, you can just buy a pre-made frame online through AmericanFrame.com or Framing for Yourself, and then you could just do the rest yourself. This is the end of the video. I'm showing you how to do it with a lot less hardware here. And this is a piece of mat board that I'm putting on the back of my piece after I just tape or glue my piece to the mat board in the front that came with the frame. And this, if you're ordering frames, pre-assembled frames online, you want to save money, you use something like this. This might be the only tool you actually need. That's fairly expensive, but not too bad. Not as expensive as the big saw table and Pro Joiner. You're using it to add staples to the back, and this is a stapler that shoots a staple in from the side, as opposed to a normal stapler that, of course, shoots the staple in from the top and shoots it down into something. So what you want to do is make sure there's enough staples in there. You just click on this button, little clip comes up, and you put the staples in right there. There's a little track that shows you where you should put the staples in. They're these long staples with a triangular tip, and it's very simple to use. You make sure the device is flush up against your piece. You pull down on the lever, as I'm showing you there, and it shoots a staple in. And the more staples you shoot into this piece on the back of the frame, the better it's going to hold your piece down, your painting in the front. And now it's holding down the painting, the mat, board, and the glass up to the front of the frame. Usually when you buy these pre-assembled pieces of molding, you'll only get the what you see here as the black part of the frame, for instance. And everything that goes in the back, your artwork and the glass, you assemble that all yourself, but you save hundreds of dollars, and that's why I do it. If you were to take, you know, a piece to the framer, it would cost hundreds and hundreds of dollars for every frame. And usually when I assemble frames like this, it just costs me anywhere from like $30 to sometimes $70 or $80, as opposed to $200 to $300, maybe $400 for custom framing. So this is double stick tape. And I'm showing you one of the last steps here, which is just simply backing the frame so that you don't see all the, you know, the skeleton underneath or the inner workings. And you put some of that double stick tape down on every edge of the frame, running along all the edges before you set down your brown or black paper. You can use brown packing paper, but this black paper I feel looks a lot nicer and is a little better quality and is made for framing. I used to use the brown paper, but I use this now. And what I do is I press down on the edge to find the seam on every side after the double stick tape holds the brown or black paper down. And then I'll grab a little exacto knife and I'll just trim the excess paper that's hanging off the edge from the frame. I'll usually put my thumb down on the side while I'm doing this so that the cut is consistent. So you want to make sure it's really secure. Sometimes I'll put some double stick tape down there at the end underneath the paper. You don't want to use glue. I used to use glue. Like you don't want to use Elmer's or wood glue or anything like that, because it'll bubble up and you'll see, you know, where you glued the edges, and you don't want to see that. You want it to be nice and smooth, and that's why using double stick tape is, you know, sort of the industry standard here, and that's what all sorts of framers use, because it doesn't, you know, leave any marks or little bubbles or glue lines. The next step is adding a wire hanger. These are really easy to find at hardware stores and arts and crafts stores. You can order them online too. What you want to do is buy some wire, some little hooks. For larger pieces, a D-ring hanger can support additional weight. As you can see here, I screw them in at an angle, and I make sure I'm using hanger wire, which has a little plastic coating on it so it doesn't, you know, rub up against anything and scuff it up or scratch it. Sometimes some of my frames, I'm sure you guys will do this from time to time, you'll buy those pre-made frames. I put some bumpers on there. You can find those bumpers at hardware stores and arts and crafts stores. Other times I use professional bumpers. This is a finished piece, and I just wanted to show you what it looks like when it's done. So thanks for watching.